What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another F1 video. Today, happy Wednesday. Ooh, I forgot today is race week, but I forgot the day of the week. Currently Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing good and amazing, man. Now, listen, yesterday we checked out like the Alpine situation and why their cars are so fat. So today I'm like, man, like let's really like deep dive into it and let's just see like what's making these cars fat, like what's making these cars like chubby, chub. The reason F1 teams are so overweight. So I'm like, let's go and check it out. As always, boys and girls, hope you guys are doing good. Don't forget to like the video and sub as well. Shout out to Driver61. That's it. Quick, easy intro. Let's see.
F1 cars are the heaviest they've ever been, and for the first season in a while, F1 teams are struggling to get their cars down to the minimum weight of 795 kilograms after a last-minute 3-kilogram addition. The cars of 20 years ago were over 150 kilograms lighter. So why has this happened? Which bits are heaviest, and what are teams doing to shed some fat? Well, Scott is back
Shout
to some
out
F1
Scott Mansell.
engineering.
The majority of the teams are maybe 5 to 10 kilograms over. One or two teams, as we understand, are on the weight limit. Obviously, aren't happy that the weight limit's being played about with slightly within the regulations, having work to meet that what was supposed to be a fixed target. At this weight, the cars are, incredibly heavy. You have to balance that out with they've got over 1,000 horsepower, so the power to weight ratio is still, on a par with what it's ever been.
That's kind of crazy.
F1's period, apart from
that's kind of crazy.
The early turbo period where the cars were very light, very powerful, but equally very unsafe. And that really is kind of the story of the weight increase over the years.
Now, it's important to note that the 795 kilograms includes 80 kilograms for the driver, plus their helmet, overalls, hands device, and boots, and so on. So the overall weight of the car is actually 715 kilograms, of course, without fuel. On a slight side note, F1 cars in the mid-70s and early 80s were legally supposed to be around 550 kilograms. But
wouldn't the fuel add in more weight to cars though? I mean, I would assume that would contribute towards the overweight of a car. Well, back then, not now.
As ever, found ways to bend the rules. Just a little bit.
The cars were made of aluminium. You had a relatively basic Cosworth engine in the back of the majority of these cars. Cosworth engine was about 130, 140 kilograms on its own, big chunk of the car. Even then, you had some of the teams, certainly the ones running the Cosworth DFEs, were actually ballasting the cars with huge water tanks in the side pods to get up to that minimum weight. And they would only need to actually be at that weight when they were weighed after the race. They could top up fluids, which included these huge water tanks, which were used for either engine water injection or brake cooling. Obviously, there were none of the sort, but it did allow the teams to run underweight in the race and still make the minimum weight as the regulation stood at the time.
By the way, if you haven't signed up to our free weekly F1 newsletter, join us by clicking the link below. So it's clear the cars are heavy and the teams are finding it hard to shed weight. But where is all this weight and which parts are the heaviest?
So first of all, we can take away 80 kilograms for the driver, so 15 kilograms. Then you see what's changed in the regulations this year. So straight away, the wheels and tyres have got a lot heavier this year because you've got a bigger wheel and a much stronger tyre to cope with the lower profile that it has. The rear tyre itself now, with the wheel, is 20.
I guess that's like the only bad thing about having like a bigger and better tire is that you are going to be a tad bit overweight, which means it's kind of going to hurt your car to a degree because it's more weight on the tire. So you have to like obviously like drive and brake and do all that differently than you probably would before. But it's a good and bad, and the tire was the first example. So I wonder if like the car engine, stuff like that, like the makeup of the car, but like obviously makeup of the car, but it's like the engine, like how is the engine that
all of the wheels
heavy?
are, that's 80 kilograms. That's 10% of the car's weight is just in the wheels and tires. The power unit, which again lots of people blame, which I don't
power
think is
unit as
entirely
well.
fair, at 150 kilograms is what, maybe 15% of the car's weight. I don't know the exact maths, so do excuse me. But again, that's a big chunk of weight. But then other things have changed this year. The biggest regulation changes, apart from the tyres, are in the areas largely of safety. So first of all, you've got an increased impact test for the front, the rear and the side of the car, 15% increase in the energy that these structures need to absorb. And the only way you can do that with such optimized structures already, and the shapes of them are actually much more sympathetic to crash testing they have been in recent years, is just to add material. It's unavoidable. So the crash structures are much heavier. You've got a front anti-intrusion panel which weighs a couple of kilograms.
That's good, though.
You've got extra tethers for the rear impact structure and for the rear wing. That adds weight, roll structure and what have you. So safety has always increased the weight of the cars, and if you certainly compare the weight of the car now back to the 80s, even the sort of the pre-Senna 90s era, most of the weight change is in the safety.
So
that makes sense though, because like look at the cars from like the 60s and 50s, stuff like that, and probably the 70s compared to now. Like there's a like the Halo's probably been like the biggest change since back then, like the Halo stuff like that. Like to protect drivers. Like I mean, you probably see why back then they were damn near, like they were speeding, like they were driving really, really fast across like races, stuff like that. But now it's still fast, but like there's an added extra like safety.
And I'm sure we're behind that.
Thing with
but another reason are the changes around budget and trying to save the teams a bit of money.
Spec components, and you have what they call open source components. Now, while spec components, the teams just have to use them. And one example of that are the wheel covers, which get added to the wheel.
Rear lights.
You would really want them to be in carbon fiber. But of course, then with the amount of wheels that you get through in a race weekend, each team get through 100 wheels. Paying for 100 carbon wheel covers is expensive, so they're 3D printed in a sort of plastic resin, and that adds weight, but not cost. So there's a trade-off there. And then you have these open source components, which are components that the teams still design, like the brake calipers, for example, but they then have to put the CAD and all the data for them available on a cloud server that all the teams can get access to. So they're not encouraged to be really innovative with these part designs, because everyone else can just copy them and gain the advantage, and you're basically spending development time that can be shared freely with other teams. So parts like that tend to start getting a little heavier as well. And then overall, you have the aerodynamics of the cars, the shape of the front wing, the rear wing, but especially the floor. If you think of the shape of the floor previously, it was much shorter. It was much better supported around the car. It had much less loads on it. Now you have a much larger floor. There's much higher load. You've got much more areas of it where it's not very well supported at the front and at the back. So the floor now is a very heavy component. And again, that is fixed to the wheelbase of the car. So the longer your car, the heavier your floor is going to be.
So it seemed like a main reason for like a lot of these cars getting heavier, stuff like that. It's just because of like, it's just been like more things that need to be on a car to make the car better for races, stuff like that. Like a bigger floor, like you just said. Like we talked about like the engine, like the safety like hazard stuff, like the safety measurements, like all that's been needed in terms of like, to make your car heavier.
In terms of lap time and impact.
But do you want to get like race and stuff?
Weight is expensive. Of course, the teams will want to reduce weight as much as possible, but on already well-developed cars, that's not as easy as you might think.
They're restricted by several things. First of all, the budget cap. They can't just go out and make a lighter component really quickly, get rid of the old one, because that will soon stack up the price in parts. Every time they introduce a new part to the race car, it goes onto the budget, so that has to be accounted for. Equally, developing new parts takes up time at the factory in terms of paying for the staff to develop these parts and the components and the materials to make them. If it's an aero part, that will need to be taken through the wind tunnel, and again, they've got restricted wind tunnel time. Do they develop parts that are lighter, or do they develop parts that make the car faster, or some blend of the two? There's quite a quandary for them. So teams will be looking throughout every aspect of the car to find areas where they can save weight. Now, one of the things everyone's noticed that the cars this year are much blacker than they used to be. The liveries have got much more bare carbon fiber. This isn't some sort of marketing trend of, like matte paint was. It was basically paint costs weight. So you take the paint off, you save yourself some kilos, but not kilos, hundreds of grams perhaps. So
Alpine, that makes sense now. So the extra paint like really does add like the extra grams of that. So like the taking off like a paint stripe or like stuff or like a like area really does make that big of a difference. That's crazy. That's still crazy, but I get it. I get it. I get it. I see now.
That's one thing. Other aspects, suspension components, braking components, the engine's pretty much fixed. So there's not much they can do there. They won't be changing the tubs themselves or the crash structures because they're all homologated. It'll be very hard for them. So it's all the detail components. And this isn't just the teams that they'll be weighing in on. I've known in the past where the teams have been overweight, where they really lean on all of their parts suppliers. So anything coming into the team from a third party, even seatbelts, the little cutouts in the metal brackets and parts that you pull down on the seatbelts, they all get pushed. The suppliers get pushed to say grams, and we are talking about just ones or twos of grams.
That's crazy.
Across the thousands of parts on a car. That soon adds up to a kilogram.
So the weight saving will come from a range of areas,
just specifics,
as you might expect, with a few grams here and there. We expect most of the teams with their development cycles to be down to the minimum weight by the Spanish Grand Prix in May. However, the quest for weight saving, as with most things in F1, never really stops, and teams will continue to chase weight saving so they can then add ballast to the car to bring it up to the right weight, meaning the weight is better positioned. Thanks to Scarbs for this video, and don't forget to subscribe.
That was I get it now, but it's crazy how specific they get into just to take off like a gram, which can lead to like a kilogram, you said. Anyway, hope you guys did enjoy the video. Don't forget to like the video and sub as well. Take care, stay amazing, be great. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.